So we have been doing this sermon series about I am.
I am. Say I am.
I am. There you go. By the fourth week, you might get it. So we're on week 3, so you've only got 1 week left to practice. But this is the 3rd week, but I want to recap on some of the things that we've talked about and some of the thoughts that I've had around this series. You see, Jesus uses I am statements to help those that are traveling with him or those that he encounters on the way, to help them to understand things. And sometimes we take those statements so far out of context that we forget where they came from. The first week we talked about Jesus saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And we talked about Jesus not really wanting to be exalted and put up on this huge pedestal to be worshipped till the end of time. But actually what he wanted was to show us the way to God by his example. And all the way through his journey, he was the one that did things with humility, with challenge, but always leading that path to God. You know, there are people that we encounter in our everyday lives that you just know can lead you to God. Not because they're sprouting stuff from the Bible, but because of the way that they're leading their lives. You can say as much as you like, don't make a follower of Christ. What does that is the way that you lead your life. And so we need to be careful that we don't put Jesus in such a position, 1, that he didn't want to be, and 2, he shouldn't be. But to rather listen to the stories that he told and the way that he led his life in order to find our way to the God of our understanding. Last week was I am the vine and we are the branches. And for me, that passage says to me that I need things pruned away from me in order to reflect the love of God. You see, we all think we're perfect. Some of us think it more than others. But actually, we need to be pruned back sometimes. And why that example is used of the vine is because if the vine is not taken care of, it becomes unwieldy. We have a water pump at the front of the house, and there was this ugly buck shelter that was over it, so that came down. And planted some lettuce around it and some jasmine. And the jasmine plants were this high, they're now about 16 feet in 4 months. But if I didn't take care to wrap them around and look at them and kind of prune them back or move them, they cannot sustain themselves without something there to help them. So they can grow and grow and grow and grow, but they'd be unwieldy and there'll be no fruit. And we can be the same, and chaos can ensue. And so this week we're talking about the bread of life. And this is a passage from John 6. And Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Now, I want to be very clear, even though a lot of the images that we used prior to service talked about a loaf of bread. So this is not about physical bread, although we often use these images to help us understand this. And I don't know about you, but bread sustains us. And if you're somebody like me, it sustains you a lot. Especially when it's got good English butter on it. And I can be sustained for years on bread. But this is about spiritual sustenance. But we do need to talk about those physical hunger cravings. Because many of you know, some of you may not know, you will too, that I slightly crave chocolate. English chocolate. And I get such cravings for English food. It is hard to manage. Sometimes I will eat just about everything in the cupboard and in the fridge to try and get rid of that craving. And sometimes I get to the point where I'm so bloated that I have to lay on the bed and just not be sick. Because I've eaten so much. But what has happened is I've eaten and eaten and eaten, but my craving hasn't gone. And that's what our spirits are like. We try to feed ourselves spiritually with absolutely everything in the world except that which will sustain us. I think it's pretty simple. We feel spiritually hungry, we connect with God, we feel satisfied. It's simple. Except that we feel spiritually hungry, we feed off negativity. We find television, we find movies, we seek out Facebook, maybe some Facebook posts that will make us feel a bit better about ourselves. We look to somebody else to make us feel better. And we have made it so hard. And some of that might work for a second or two, a bit like my craving for eating. But it doesn't sustain us. That first reading this morning, at the end of it, it says, and then comes one who speaks into our needs, who opens out the secret hopes that we cherish, whose very presence calls our hidden hearts to flourish, whose words unfold in us like living seeds. Come to me, broken, hungry, incomplete, for I am the bread of life. Break me and eat. We're reminded through that reading that there is something else that speaks into our very particular needs. Now, we're all different. We know that. We have different needs. We have different physical needs when we go to eat. I know this week on Facebook there was a post asking how southern are we? And there was like 30 odd foods on there. And how many of these have you eaten? Somebody at the back has eaten more than 30 of these foods. Somebody at the front has eaten one. We're very different in our needs. But our God is different for all of us. How would it be if we went in the supermarket and there was just one type of peanut butter? One type of potato chips? It wouldn't meet all the needs. And God knows that in us. And so the way that we encounter God and the way that we have a relationship with God is very different. And in that difference, we can be sustained spiritually. Do we really want our daily bread to be Facebook? Do we really want our daily bread to be television, PlayStations, Netflix, movies, whatever stimulation that we can plop in front of us to stop us connecting with God or with each other? When was the last time that you looked onto social media? And I understand there are a couple of people that don't do social media, so bear with me. But you may have an example in your mind. When was the last time that you thought about somebody and actually picked up the phone and said, hi, how are you? Because you popped in my mind. Or for some of you, did you just pop on their Facebook and make sure everything's okay? Because that is our becoming our world and our habit. Somebody I know in Gainesville decided to have 4 months of Facebook. And we came back on yesterday and said, I have never felt better in my life. I am not continuously scrolling through Facebook to make me feel better. Now, if you don't do Facebook, there is probably something that you do to make you feel better. But what she found was that she went out and met with people. She had coffee with people, sat and talked to people. She looked after her physical health, her spiritual health. And so literally came back on Facebook yesterday to say, I have enjoyed my Facebook break so much, I'm off for another one. 24 hours was enough for me. The passage from John is an essential part of a series that has conversations that Jesus has with people after the miracles. He has to explain things to everybody. Because when things happen, they sit there and they're like, oh, I don't know why that happened. And Jesus has to go on and explain everything. So this passage sits after the miracles and the walking on water. Jesus uses different imagery to help the people around him to truly understand what is happening. And in that first century context, the symbol of bread was like an invitation for the followers to rethink the history that they had about their understanding of God. It also provided like this symbol on which to understand Jesus and his journey. And that invitation to rethink things helps us to truly connect with our God. You see, we get taught things when we're young, or we get taught things by parents or friends or family. But at the end of the day, nobody else can take us on our spiritual journey. Nobody else can give us the bread that we need. The only way that we can grow spiritually is by exploring our own journey with God and making that spiritual bread available and taking it and eating it. The crowd back in the day was so focused on the physical realm, they were a bit like us today in social media. They needed reminding that they were forgetting the spiritual, just as sometimes we do, even if we don't want to admit it. But we have the opportunity each and every single day to switch that around, but only if we want to. And our methods may be different, but our connection to the divine can be very similar in nature to each other. It's the interaction with each other that will be different. I invite all of us to really think about how we feed our spiritual selves and whether our bread is in something physical or whether it's something spiritual. This morning, we are delighted that Kathy and Sue, who have been coming with us, have decided they want to transfer their membership to our church. And so we want to invite them to come forward as we ask them questions about their spiritual journey, as we ask them questions about their commitment with our church. And then we will bring them into membership. The right of membership in MCC is the means by which individuals can join in the life and ministry of this particular community. And to become a member of MCC is to affirm the things that this community holds sacred. This community holds as our mission to reflect the unconditional love, the unconditional acceptance for all of the diverse children of God. To become a member is also to embrace the calling of this community, to be attentive to the needs of others, to be attentive to the needs of this church and those who call MCC home. It's also to respond affirmatively to the call of God to participate in the life and mission of this family of God's people, sharing in the worship of God and enlisting one's unique gifts in the work of this church, as together we serve the community and the world. And so today it's with great enthusiasm that we celebrate the joining of Sue and Kathy, who want to be part of this MCC community through membership.
It's very exciting to now be making official the covenant of membership between these individuals and the community. This is not a covenant entered into lightly. Sue and Kathy really thought about what membership means and what they want their connection to this congregation to be. And they are ready to invest in this relationship more fully by becoming a member. This is a special moment for them and for all of us. Thank you.
Hear now the words of Scripture. You are no longer sojourners and strangers, but you are equally citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus being the cornerstone, in whom you also are built into that structure to be a dwelling place of God in the Spirit. So I'm going to ask you some questions. You know what they are. Will you support and embrace the mission, vision, and values of MCC, becoming an active member and minister of this community, sharing joyfully and freely of your gifts, your time, your talents, and your treasure? If so, please say yes, I will.
Yes, I will.
Upon prayerful consideration, do you desire to be in relationship with this community of faith, participating regularly in the life and mission of this family of God's people, sharing your spiritual journey and becoming a part of the spiritual journey of others with love and respect? If so, please say yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
As you unite with this church, will you worship, serve, and share its ministry, supporting it by your earnest prayers, regular attendance, loyal service, and faithful stewardship, committing yourself to the process of spiritual growth? And will you work together with your church family in love and harmony to promote God's dominion in the world?
Yes, I will.
So as members and friends of this church, will you support Kathy and Sue in their spiritual journeys? Will you reflect and model to them love and friendship, becoming workers together? Not just together with them, but with all people here, to be in service to others for the greater glory of God? If so, please say yes.
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 Gracious God, as we embark on this journey with Sue and Kathy, we ask that you strengthen them and strengthen us as a body so that we all become one and we walk together. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. May I introduce you to Sue and Kathy, our newest